Check the description for the following discount codes. Having looked at Logitech's latest offering only the other day, I thought it was about time I caught up with Thrustmaster's latest offering as well. Now this has of course been out a little while, the T598 direct drive wheelbase, or axial direct drive wheelbase as it actually is. I'll explain that briefly in a minute, but I'm sure you can already tell there's something a little bit different about this just by looking at the shape of it. We'll quickly go over the ports on the back. We have a 3-pin power in. We have the DIN socket for the pedals, I believe it is. Sorry, no, not the pedals. The shifter. The pedals are the next one along, which is an RJ socket. There's an additional one that's kind of unknown as far as I'm aware. We're not sure what that's for yet. And then, of course, there's your USB-C, which goes back to your PC. On the front, we have the quick release for the shaft, which is kind of bespoke to Thrustmaster. We pull that up there so it opens like this, and obviously you've got this bespoke shape there, and then that just clamps back down. I'll show you a close-up of that in operation now. Actually, taking the wheel on and off on my sim rig, nice and easy, no issues with it at all. You just got to make sure you line up the shape. It is plastic, of course, but then you know the wheel itself that we're using here, that's plastic also, and all of Thrustmaster's wheels have a plastic quick release. You can use your existing Thrustmaster wheels with an adapter that converts from the old screw-on type to this new clamp variant, should you have an array of Thrustmaster wheels already. So other things we have on the front here, a few buttons. We've got a config button which takes you into the menu, which is where you adjust your force feedback settings. That can't be done in the software, even on PC. It can only be done here at the time of recording, that is. And then you've got a mode button, which takes you to a mode select screen where you can choose between PlayStation and PC. In fact, I'll put up a video of me going through those menus now for you to see the various force feedback settings that are available, and then of course the PlayStation and PC modes. So once you've entered that menu, you then use the up, down, left and right buttons on the steering wheel, which we'll take a look at in a second, to go through the menus and make your adjustments. So that really is all the physical attributes of the wheel. You can see there's a fair few fins. You know, it's effectively like a heatsink. There's no active cooling. I didn't hear a fan or anything kick in during use, and it got reasonably warm, but not hot, you might say. I suppose on the bottom, 4 mounting threads. Now this is an interesting one, right? Just take a close-up look at that. There's quite a lot of space around those threads, those inserts, right? Plenty of room to put them elsewhere, which is what they really should have done, because instead you have to use this, which is a very, very thin bracket. And you bolt using the 4 holes there to the base, like you saw a second ago, and you use the ones either side here to bolt down to your rig. There'll be something on the screen now showing you it fitted to my rig. And the issue with this is not only does it look a bit pony, it introduces an opportunity for flex, because this metal bracket is not particularly thick and it does flex. Now there's also flex in the quick release, there's flex in the wheel, it's all plastic, and we've got to remember here, expectations shouldn't be set too high because this is quite cheap. It's £450 here in the UK, and that's for the wheelbase, the wheel and this twin pedal set that you see at the back here. So it's not mega money in terms of, and it's 5 Newton meters of torque as well, so it would be comparable to the R5 from Moser or the Fanatec CSL DD without the boost pack. So, you know, it's priced in about the right spot. But anyway, yeah, this I really don't like. They should have just made the bolt holes like normal Thrustmaster pattern, or Fanatec pattern, or Logitech pattern, or any pattern other than that one, so that you could just bolt this directly to your sim rig, because that would remove one of the points of flex. I suppose I can see why maybe they've done it, because if you are going to use the table clamps, which there are 2 of, these slot over there like that, and you would clamp it down either side using this. If you just had screw holes in the bottom of the base, I guess you'd need to design a table clamp. So you could just do that. You could just, yeah, make your table clamp look like this, and then screw your table clamp to the base. That would have been the way to go, right? Yeah, but no, they didn't. So we have a weird bespoke bolt pattern on the bottom of the unit that can't bolt to any of the traditional wheel decks, so you're forced to use it. So that's the first negative I come across with that. As I say, price point, so expectations. Been over the wheelbase itself. The wheelbase of the axial motor design. A normal motor, picture a cylinder, coils of wire, and then magnets around the outside edge, kind of encompassing it, right? This is the opposite. There is a circle plate, like a clutch plate, you might envision if you're familiar with what clutch friction plates look like, with magnets on, and then the coils sit on a plate behind that. So they're two separate plates together like this. One's full of magnets, one's full of coils, and that's how it operates. What that does is it reduces friction, increases response, and torque. So if we spin this, it will keep spinning for quite some time. If I did that with a wheel on, it would actually spin for ages. Whereas a normal direct drive base won't do that because of the friction. It also means there's no cogging. The phrase cogging's wrong anyway. That refers to teeth in cogs. With a traditional motor, where those magnets are around the outside of the armature of the windings, as you turn the wheelbase like this by hand without any power to it, you can feel it going from one magnet to the next, to the next, to the next, especially on lower end wheelbases where there aren't as many magnets used and aren't as many coils. With this, you can't. It's just perfectly smooth. Like, I've never felt one smooth. You know, you can't normally do that and it just carry on spinning. So that is 100% true. And you can see how from a response and torque point of view, that would be advantageous as well. If there's less drag, less resistance to moving itself when a voltage is applied, you know, the appropriate magnets and coils to get it to move where you want it to, it's going to be faster because there's less resistance from the off. And then when it comes to extracting the most amount of torque available from any given motor, again, the less resistance there is for it to move itself in the first place, the more of that torque is translated to the wheel and ultimately your hands. It's a bit like in real car engines, we refer to something called pumping losses, which is how much energy or horsepower is lost through having to rotate the mass of the engine itself. So similar principle here. Yeah, so I think that's everything on the wheelbase. Did I mention the screen? Yes, I've shown you that already. So yeah, that's the wheelbase. And the only ball ache with this design is it makes it very tall, and it does block, like when you're racing, it blocks the view of your display somewhat compared to traditional motors. So that's a bit of a pain. Let's have a look at steering wheel now. This is where price point comes in. This is a very cheap, plasticky feeling wheel. We've got rubber rather than any sort of leather or other type of material. This is, I hope you can hear that. That's proper child's toy, hollow plastic top and bottom we have here. The paddles, I mean, they function. They do feel like they're magnetic, actually. They function, but obviously they're not amazing. There's no adjustment there. Everything you see here is plastic. The buttons feel distinctly average, very lightweight. You know, they're fine, they function, but nothing to write home about. And then we've got this weird design with these four what look like aluminium bands, but are probably plastic, dotted around it. The idea normally of the one we have at the top of a wheel is to make it visually very easy to spot when the wheel is off axis, where the top of the wheel is. Got four of them. How confusing is that to just glance at? They don't tell you anything, so that's a slightly weird design choice. So yeah, this 100% feels like a toy. I used to have a Thrustmaster wheelbase, a TSPC, and the TX, the one down from that, and they do some nice wheels. So it's not like you're stuck with this one. There are much better options out there. This just isn't a good one. I don't think there's anything else to talk about on this wheel. There's no display. There's no... So you may notice the PlayStation logo on there. This is, of course, cross-compatible. This is what's on PlayStation and PC. Again, this is the trouble with being a console owner. For those of you that are, your choices are limited. It was really good that Logitech have recently released that RS50 because that is a great wheelbase. You know, nothing but high praises for that, apart from the somewhat flaky quick release that likes to crumble away in use. Weird. But yeah, that's, you know, you don't have a lot of choice. So you've got this from Thrustmaster, you've got Logitech's couple of offerings, and you've got Fanatec's offerings as well. So it's always nice to have more options in the space. But anyway, yeah, this wheel, awful. Yes, it functions. At least it's round and not D-shaped. So if you want to do rally or drifting, you'd have a full circular wheel to use. You know, if it was an open wheel, top and bottom flattened off, you know, for F1 or GT3, you obviously couldn't do rally or drifting. So at least it's a round wheel. That is a positive. So on from that, we have the pedals. I actually just want to, excuse me for 1 second, I just want to grab the Fanatec CSL pedals. I meant to get these earlier and completely forgot, just to compare the widths of the pedal sort of base itself. And the reason for that is because, yes, this is only a twin pedal set we're looking at here, but you may even be able to tell just by looking at it, it's extremely narrow. If we compare it to the width of these, because you can buy an additional, you can buy a clutch for these Thrustmaster pedals, but look at the width difference. How close together are your feet going to be if you have 3 pedals on this? Again, it's almost like it's designed for kids, but it isn't really. So that was a bit of a weird one. You know, and the thing is, you can move the pedals along if you want to. That's what these bolt holes are for. But they're really because you can get a load cell upgrade and add in a clutch. But I mean, I was going to say it's all metal. These pedal faces actually feel plastic to me. There is some adjustment. You see these slots here? You can squeeze this in. Don't know how easy I'm going to be able to do. Is that still in shot? Yeah, you can squeeze this in. It comes out like that, and you can slot it into 1, 2, or 3 to adjust the preload on the accelerator. The brake has 3 options as well. Currently on the stiffest one, there's also an additional spring that comes for the brake. That's the stiffest one that's in there now. You have got this small elastomer here, so as you're using these, it compresses the spring initially, which is like a softer stage, and then it gets to the elastomer, and that starts to squeeze up as well. It's not load cell, they are Hall effect, so it is position-based braking rather than pressure-based braking. But at least with this sort of 2-stage feel, the pedal doesn't actually feel that bad. You just have to calibrate your brain to position-based braking rather than pressure. You can still modulate, you know, because ultimately, even with only travel-based braking, further is more, back off is less. So you can still modulate around an area, even if it's not as precise as just pressure like it would be on a load cell-based pedal. But these feel okay. They've got carpet grips which are fitted because I tested them on carpet. In fact, there's a video I'll put up now of me testing them. That's a bit pony, to be honest. If you brake too hard, they just lift up off the ground, which is kind of to be expected because when you're pushing on the face of the pedals, your heels aren't really applying any downward pressure. You know, your heel kind of comes off the ground. So, but that's not a problem as such with these pedals. That's how all pedals that you use on carpet are going to be. The moment you apply force that way, it wants to lift up. So there's nothing much you can do about that. Other weird things with these pedals, they come with a cable to allow you to plug it into the wheelbase, but it's the weirdest setup I've ever seen. I pointed out it was like an RJ 11 or 12 type plug on the socket on the back of the wheelbase. The pedals then individually plug in using 3.5mm stereo jack plugs. They go into underneath here. I'll just put them in and then you can see once they're in. They go in like that, there and there. That is the most, I've never seen pedals that just plug in like that. It's very, very weird. So there's not even like you know, a little, I was about to say there's no USB controller, but there wouldn't be because they don't plug in USB, they plug into the wheelbase. So much strangeness in the design of the pedals, particularly the width issue. You load that up with a third pedal and you're going to be very, very cramped, which is, you know, a big issue for anyone with feet, you know, feet over, what, I don't know, what size 7 or something. I don't know. Anyone with adult size feet going to find that a problem, but never mind. So we've looked at the wheelbase itself. I've explained the technology, the screen, the options, how it works, how smooth it is. I've shown you the pedals and the wheel and the table clamps. What you want to know now is, should we buy it, Carl? How does it drive? What's the force feedback like? So let's get some footage up of me testing it out. The force feedback, 5 Newton meters. The only other 5 Newton meter wheelbase I have is a CSL-DD, so that's the direct comparison. It feels on par with that, strength-wise, no issues there. The force feedback itself, how can I best describe this? You've got, so there's a little bit of kind of noise from the wheelbase when you move the wheel very, very slowly. Early reviews of this unit said that that noise and vibration was there when the wheel was just sat stationary, which it was. Mine did exactly the same until I updated the firmware. Now when the wheel's stationary, there is no more noise or vibration. But if you move the wheel very, very slowly, and I'll put up some footage of this in a minute, I put my microphone right beside it, so you may or may not be able to hear it. When you move the wheel very slowly, you get this weird vibration. It's almost like static over a radio, but coming out of the wheelbase, and it vibrates the whole wheelbase, including the steering wheel itself. Now, when the wheel's stationary, it doesn't do it, and when you're moving the wheel at speed, it doesn't do it, but it is there when you move the wheel slowly, and that's just annoying. I remember Will from Boosted Media, when he reviewed this, he spoke to Thrustmaster and he said, yes, it's normal, it's just part of how this axial drive technology is, because there is, you know, it's almost a free spinning, you know, motor. There's no resistance there. The wheel is kind of like it's wanting to twitch to the nearest magnet, so to speak, when you're not moving it. So I guess they probably cut the power to it when the wheel registers no movement at all, and that's how it no longer does it when it's dead center, but the moment you move it slowly, it does it. Anyway, it's not there under, you know, faster inputs, so you forget about it? Kind of, yes, until you move slowly and then you notice it's there. Whether you'll have heard it on that microphone in that clip or not, I don't know, but you can tell me in the comments. You don't hear it above things like speakers. If you have the game sounds for a set of speakers, you wouldn't hear it, but you will feel it. Now the force feedback itself, the strength, as I say, is fine. That's definitely on par with the 5 Newton meter CSL-DD. Detail-wise and overall force feedback experience, I'm going to say is very mixed. It almost feels like in some areas it's lacking, in other areas it's too pronounced. I suppose messy is a good way of describing it. The force feedback just feels messy and unrefined. I guess a mixture of adding in that little bit of vibration and noise at lower input speeds doesn't help that. But the actual, yes, it's unrefined, almost like, you know, like that PXN wheel that I reviewed a while back. I was like, it almost feels like it just lacks polish. This feels like it lacks polish, the force feedback, that is. It's just not as refined, or it doesn't behave as you would expect it to behave, you know, having driven lots of other direct drive wheels. It is, I mean, I wouldn't, so given that if someone said to me, would you want this or the Fanatic or the Logitech, I'd be like, Fanatic or Logitech all day long. This can stay in its box. For 2 reasons. One, the force feedback is messy. Well, 3 reasons. Force feedback is messy. I don't like the way the wheel looks and how tall it is, because it obstructs your view of the screen. And if you've, like me, you've got triple setup and you've got the actual dashboard of the car with all your gauges, you know, your speed, your RPM, traction control settings, all on there, and then you put that in the way, you can't see what you're looking at, can you? And obviously there's nothing on here. You can have, you know, gear on here, you can have RPM, you can have other bits and bobs, but you can't have a full dashboard. And obviously there's nothing on the steering wheel either. So yeah, I don't like the shape and form factor of this. I don't like the messy force feedback, and I don't like the cheap ass wheel, nor do I like the pedals because they're too close together. They actually feel fine for entry level pedals, non-load cell. They're just too close together. So yes, unless you're already in the Thrustmaster ecosystem, I don't really see a reason to buy this. If you've already got 5, 6, 7 Thrustmaster wheels and there are other load cell pedals, and perhaps you want to go, the thing is, I don't know, I probably wouldn't choose this over the TSPC Racer that I had before. I mean, it's been a long time since I've used it, but from memory, I think I'd probably stick with that, because that puts out about 5 or 6 Newton meters of torque as well, from memory. And yes, it's a belt-driven one, so there is a cog belt around the cogs. It's not direct drive, but the benefits of a direct drive wheelbase, which are normally response and power and smoothness, are not really here. Yes, it's responsive and spinning the shaft is smooth, but the force feedback isn't very smooth or refined. It's messy, and there's that sort of vibration and noise you get at low speed steering inputs. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend this, like I say, unless you're in the Thrustmaster ecosystem. You've got the pedals, and maybe you've got their shifter, their handbrake, and you just want to change your wheelbase. But even then, I'd be like, if you've got the TSPC Racer, or the TXXW was the console equivalent, if you've got that, I probably wouldn't bother. I'll be interested to hear in the comments if any of you have upgraded from one of those to this, to see what your thoughts are, because this has been out a while now, so the firmware and the software should be mature, which means I'm getting as good an experience as we're probably going to get from it. When it was reviewed at launch, might have been a year ago now, you can forgive certain things that aren't quite right, but not this far into its production run. So should you want one, there will be a link in the description if you're in the Thrustmaster ecosystem, and you absolutely must have one. But I would recommend instead console users, Logitech or Fanatic. There's discounted links to everything in the description, whichever way you choose to go. But yeah, that's my advice, that's my thoughts on the Thrustmaster T598 and whatever these pedals are called. As always, thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.